the Jimmy Dore versus the TYT trauma that's going on. I want to know, what are your opinions on that?
Actually, this one, I'm sure a lot of people have been following it. If not, basically, there's a rift between Jimmy Dore and TYT, and a lot of other leftist political commentators have gotten involved with this. So it started with Jimmy and Ana. Just long story short, started with Jimmy and Ana. It escalated to Jimmy coming to the defense of Aaron Mate, a one of I think the best reporters and journalists in the entire country, and they used a McCarthyite smear of him, calling him paid by the Russians, and calling him like basically a I don't want to say Russian agent. I don't remember exactly what was in the video. I don't want to misquote them, but to paraphrase them, they used McCarthyite smears to basically say he's paid by the Russians.
They said Aaron Mate yelled at me, and so
Aaron Mate lied. Aaron Mate. Everyone cares what Aaron Mate has to say, right?
Okay.
The guy who denies that Syrian children were killed with chemical attacks. Yeah.
And
fuck
gets
Aaron
paid by
Mate.
the.
Yeah, fuck you.
Anyway,
let's move on. Let's end the freaking pod. I can't.
Okay, see, that's what happens.
I can't stand that guy, and I can't stand the very intentional disinformation they put out there in regard to disgusting dictators around the world. The very people they seem to be working for, to be quite honest with you. Let's move on.
All right, we're done.
Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
Then TYT went on to push Syrian propaganda to say Assad used chemical weapons against his own people, which, I mean, he was already winning the war against the rebels. There was nothing to really gain at that point by using chemical weapons. It's very unlikely. Reports show that it's very unlikely that he used chemical weapons. I think that people who say that Assad uses chemical weapons are really just pushing an establishment-supported conspiracy theory. And so, I mean, TYT has had a lot of I think what happened to TYT, and I actually say this from more of an objective place than most, and I can actually comment on this from a perspective that most people can't. As I would say I was arguably TYT's #1 fan of all time. I think I could arguably make that claim. Regarding TYT, like, here's a little list of things that I've done. I've actually donated money to TYT. I've given a lot of money to TYT. I've bought merchandise, was a member when I could afford it. I've donated to TYT and Cenk's campaign. I bought multiple copies of Mad as Hell. I actually bought multiple copies of Mad as Hell, and I gave them to friends and family specifically so that I could help spread the viewership and the audience of TYT. Like, TYT was it's what I originally got me into politics in the first place. And there's a whole other reasons why I would argue. I mean, I'm the guy who drove, like, who would drive across states I've met Cenk Uygur. I was TYT's #1, and with all that stuff, people be like, oh, well, that's not a big deal. I'm sure there's other big fans who actually do a lot of that stuff, buy merchandise, donate money, or do the meetups and stuff. Like, here, I don't know if you can see this on your camera, but I actually have a TYT tattoo. I think I have enough credentials, and that's not the only thing. Like, I have enough credentials to say that I was at one point TYT's #1 fan. So for me to have the position that I now do, where I think they've really went further right, they've really fallen from grace, if you will, and become complete and utter hacks. I mean, that took a lot for me to get there, but if it's that obvious to me, then I mean, I got to imagine they're in decline at this point. Like, so regarding like I said, it started with the Ana and Jimmy thing, and she blackmailed him. with some Me Too stuff that I think personally, with the TYT's track and Ana Kasparian's, all of their track record for telling the truth or pushing propaganda, and Jimmy's, I don't want to say, I don't know. We can't definitively say we don't know what happened, but the way TYT has approached this and the way Jimmy has approached this, if somebody put a gun in my head and they told me, which one do you believe? Based on the assessed evidence, I would probably lean towards Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore's account of what happened.
Of all the people who've apologized for their statements in this, there's only one person, and that was me. 7 years ago, I apologized for a joke.
That's right.
I made to a friend immediately, without a pressure campaign, without a blackmail threat. I apologized to a friend and a coworker and my boss for a joke. And she accepted, and that's water under the bridge. And then she weaponized it 7 years later when she's getting criticized for her McCarthyism to try to distract people. Of the Young Turks doing McCarthy smears to Julian Assange, Aaron Mate, and me. And Jen called me a Nazi. I said I'm a Nazi. Said I'm a right winger. Said I'm, all this kind of stuff. And then, of course, Anna weaponized a personal incident from years ago and did a false hashtag Me Too on me, which fell flat because everyone knew it was a chance. It was her trying to deflect from being criticized for her McCarthy smears of Aaron Mate. And in fact, that's what she told me in her DM to me. So let's go over it. And I'll tell you this story. The story about that was followed by an apology card you wrote me for degrading harassment. Ana Kasparian used to dress, when I worked there, unbelievably inappropriately for a newsroom. She looked like she was going to a rave. The skirt, one time she came into the newsroom with a skirt so short. It wasn't a pencil skirt. It was like a fluffy one, too, but so short that she bent over in front of me, and I literally saw her ass and her thong. She's wearing a thong. I literally saw it. Everybody saw it. And I go, hey, Anna, nice news skirt. And everybody laughed. Like, they laughed louder than I thought they would. And so it humiliated her. She got humiliated in the middle of the newsroom. And I did it. And I felt bad. At that time, we were friendly. And I was just busting her balls, right, for dressing like that in a newsroom. You're going to bend over and show me your ass? I think that's a little... I'm not offended, but I think that's a little risque. Imagine if I did that. If I walked around showing my ass to everybody. So when I did that, so she got really mad. She got humiliated. Her face turned red. She tried to insult me back, and it just fell flat, and she looked, bad. And I felt bad for her. I didn't want to make her feel that, but I just wanted to make a little joke. And all I said was, hey, Anna, nice news skirt. And everybody in the newsroom, because everybody saw how inappropriate she used to dress. And everybody saw it. And so that's why it got such a huge laugh, and she was so humiliated. So I felt bad for her. So the next day I wrote her a card saying, hey, I'm sorry, I won't do that again. That was inappropriate. You don't have to worry about that happening again. I won't comment on your clothes anymore.
And she even sent you, Jimmy, the reason you spoke out about this, because she sent you a message.
So she sent me,
telling you that she was going to basically use this to go after you. She was essentially blackmailing you.
Yes, she was saying
it's so obvious, even by her account of what actually happened. When we know now that what you said, all you said was nice news skirt, which you then apologized for. And then she also brought up this example where you asked her where she got a pair of jeans. You could buy it for your wife.
For my wife.
You know what I mean? It was so obvious that she was like she was admitting that she was going to, in a malicious way,
conflate it.
Exploit these interactions to concoct a Me Too thing.
Yeah. She sent me a DM on a Thursday night. It says, I'm sure you remember. So this is after she's been smearing, tweeted out a doctored video of Aaron Mate that totally changed the meaning of what he was saying. And then when she was called on it, didn't apologize, didn't take responsibility for it. Saf said he worked for Assad after. So this is after. Now she's gonna do a fraudulent blackmail and try to let me know she has some evidence that she can conflate to people, right? So here's what she says. She goes, I'm sure you remember when you constantly made inappropriate comments about how sexy you found me at work. Not true. And even felt the need to ask me where I shop for my jeans so you can buy a pair for your wife so she dresses better. That is true. I asked her where she got her jeans. I wanted to buy a pair for my wife. That's what she comes up with as some kind of a thing. So she's letting me know, Jimmy, I'm going to start twisting things to blackmail you. That's what this is. Then the next line, she goes, that was followed by an apology card you wrote me for the degrading. So degrading, that's all she can come up with? Was that I asked her where she got her jeans from because I wanted to buy a pair for my wife? That's all she could come up with? It constantly happened? That's her pull? So what she's doing is letting me know that's what she's going to say. She's going to say it constantly happened, and she knows she's got these things that she can twist and conflate in a bad faith way. And she says, that was followed by an apology card you wrote me for the degrading harassment. I wrote her that card for a joke I made one time when she was in the newsroom and bent over, and everyone saw more than we should. Put it that way. I don't know how else to say this. And I made a joke, and the joke was because it got really tense. So I made a joke to break the tension in the room because everyone was like, that. And I said, hey, Anna, nice new skirt, right? To kind of let her know, give her a heads up that that's what was happening. And everyone laughed really loudly, like so loudly that she got embarrassed. And so I felt bad that I made her embarrassed. And I immediately apologized to her, and I gave her a card the next day and a gift. And I said, hey, you'll never have to worry about me commenting on your clothes again. That wasn't my intention to embarrass you at all. You know, I was just like, it threw me, and everyone was tense. And that's why it got such a big laugh, because it was obvious to everyone this was happening. So she knows that she's got a card from me apologizing for making a remark. But I apologize for the joke. I apologize for making a joke that embarrassed her. I didn't do anything. And so she's letting me know she's going to conflate that. And why is she going to do this? She said, I've been holding back, letting you run your mouth nonstop as if you're some sort of a warrior for what's going on in the world. That's going to change. So she's doing this not because she wants to warn other women about me, because there's nothing to warn them about, and she knows it, and she's not doing so, and she's doing it in retaliation for me, quote unquote, running my mouth, which means calling out her McCarthy smears of anti-war journalists. And that's what she's talking about, running my mouth. So she's going to say, I'm going to do this, make you stop running your mouth. And so I then went and told this story. I'm telling you now, I told this story on my show because she was threatening to blackmail me. I didn't give a shit. I never complained to anybody about how she dressed. I never mentioned that she dressed in a form. I never said any of that shit. I had to tell that story because she was doing this, and I had to get out in front of it. And I don't know how else to react to that. And I was advised by many people you better get out in front of it and tell your story first, because this is what they're planning.
Jimmy's usually pretty consistent. I mean, you can think he's abrasive, you can think he's like blunt, you can think he's like over the top or angry, or whatever you want to call him. But he's usually pretty consistently principled, and he's not like I haven't really seen him be proved to be a liar, but I have seen Cenk call him a liar because Jimmy said that at one point Cenk advocated for bombing Syria. Now, Cenk went on Rising after Crystal and Sagar had left. Abysmal after they left, by the way. And Cenk said, he made the argument that Jimmy's the liar, and that Cenk never said that he advocated for bombing Syria.
We get your thoughts on the ongoing feud with Jimmy Dore, which I know a lot of our viewers are following very closely. Do you have anything to add to his most recent, I would say, comments on that issue?
Everything he says is over the top, ridiculous. It's lies. His lies about me are endless. He says I'm in favor of bombing Syria. I've never said that. He's a preposterous liar. He's a ridiculous liar.
Now, as TYT's #1 fan, I've seen every single one of their videos up until like 2016, 2017 is when I started to started to skip some, and every single one of their videos multiple times. I've seen on like 2 or 3 separate occasions Cenk advocating for bombing Syria. In fact, you don't even have to take my word for it. There's clips of him advocating for it floating on Twitter right now. You can see him advocating for bombing Syria. So for him to go and say Jimmy's the liar, I never advocated for that. And then there's like contradicted video of you floating on Twitter of you advocating for that. It proves that you're the liar.
Did they cross the red line or didn't they? Now, look, I know it's a tough situation, and I've said that about Syria all along, and I know that they're partly buying time here, but the reality is they don't want to go. They were bluffing, hoping that they wouldn't cross the red line, and I know that there was good reason to bluff, because we wanted to make sure they didn't use chemical or biological weapons. But now our bluff's been called, so what are you going to do? Now, let me show you why they don't want to take military action. First of all, the American people have been polled. They don't want to go. 62% say hell no, 24% say yes. Now, I'm partly in the yes category. Here, I don't want ground troops. That would be an absolute mess. But I think if we drew a red line and we said, hey, listen, we're going to set a precedent not to use chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons, and a dictator has crossed that line, I think using our Air Force is a significant possibility, and we could, knock down their entire fleet probably fairly quickly and efficiently, thereby giving the rebels a much bigger advantage and sending a message without having to risk ground troops. So I'm curious, Jimmy, that you might agree with that, that this doesn't accomplish much, and hence what's the point? But does that mean that if it did accomplish more, you'd be in favor of it, or no? No. So you're against it under all circumstances?
So under all circumstances, I'm against it, because it's just more war and there's no reason to it. Certainly not the reason they're giving us. I have a hard time believing that Barack Obama gives a shit about the civilians in Syria. I really don't think he cares. And because if he did care, if that was really the litmus test of innocent people, why aren't we bombing North Korea? Why aren't we bombing?
Because we can. And isn't that fair? Look, I'm going to take you guys on that, okay? Because so we can't bomb Russia if Russia uses chemical weapons, because we don't want to start World War III. You're right, absolutely, right? Okay, but why don't we take the low-lying fruit? Okay, send a message wherever we practically can. So North Korea, I'd love to decapitate all the leaders in North Korea and set that country free. But we might lose Seoul, South Korea, and millions of people. We can't do it, right? And if we can do it in Syria and help some people, well, okay, that's a good place to start.
Well, the reason why you can't selectively enforce the law is because it breeds disrespect and contempt for the law. So if you're trying to uphold international law selectively, you're doing the exact opposite. You're undermining international law, because we illegally invaded Iraq, and a million people were killed, displaced other millions, countless. How many thousands of innocent people were killed in that? That was an illegal war. We lied about it. If nobody kept us in check, somehow we have to still keep other people in check. I said it yesterday, you can't have Tony Soprano giving out parking tickets. It doesn't fucking work.
Yeah, but if you...
I don't know why Israel flipped on it, but they did. So is that part of our decision-making? Have you been paying attention to American politics? Of course it's part of our decision-making. But I don't view that as nefarious. I view that as I don't know, if you're Israel, Assad is never going to harm you. And so the fact that they're now saying we should attack Assad, I don't think that's a bad thing.
And that's not the only time they've lied. Maybe he doesn't remember it. Best case scenario. How do you not remember making only a handful of videos on that subject, and then not remember your one position on it? I don't. But there's a couple of different aspects of this. There's the Me Too blackmail stuff, which is absolutely disgusting on Ana's part. There's the there's the serious stuff. There's the McCarthy smears from TYT to Aaron Matei that, they've been smearing Glenn Greenwald and they've been smearing Jimmy Dore. Anyone who advocately speaks out against them to some degree, they seem to hold a personal vendetta against that person now. It's kind of sad. It's kind of pathetic, but they've become, and I will still say that, look, they weren't perfect back in the day, but I will say the old show that they used to do was a lot better. Now, what I really, the part that interests me most about this is that some lefty political commentators say they haven't really changed much. They always had the cringy positions. We just never noticed until now. I would disagree with that. Mm-hmm. I would say that they didn't. Like I said, I've seen every single one of TYT's videos. Well, they're free videos multiple times, the ones available for YouTube. I've seen some of the paid stuff, but not as much. Like I said, I've only been a paid member when I can afford it. And so regarding the them being more left-wing in their past, I would point towards I remember watching the 2016 election. This was when I still watched TYT. And they were still held in high regards to me. And it was it was Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. And Donald Trump it was their live coverage of that election, and Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton. And Cenk Uygur, I was like, oh no, they might say something super cringy. How could you all vote for Donald Trump or something? I thought oh no, here it comes, they're going to blame the voters. Mm-hmm. And to my surprise, Cenk Uygur was pissed. He was furious. And his first instinct was to blame the establishment Democrats and say, this is your fault, your failures, this and that. And it was yes, that's the Cenk Uygur I know. That's the Cenk Uygur I love.
No, you know what? That's the reports. It's trickling in, super anecdotal. But I haven't gotten a chance to see the rest of the media and the Democratic establishment reaction yet. But we'll have all that on tomorrow's show. But what's trickling in now is total denial. What Democratic Party faults? I don't know what you're talking about. Already, look, Twitter's not much, but, is it us? Is it, was it James Comey? Was the sexism? No, you have a structural fucking problem, right?
Well,
so...
let's not oversimplify things. It's all of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sexism was a part of it. Comey was a part of it. She was a terrible candidate. The DNC pissed off a lot of people. All of those things influenced it. It's so easy to want to identify the one thing that it is, but the idea that Comey didn't influence it by the media covering nothing but the email scandal for the 6 days leading up to the campaign, or that sexism had nothing to do with it, 75% of white, non-college educated men just happened to all simultaneously hate her, and at the same time, she turned off almost every progressive in the country. They were rightfully pissed off at not just her, but also everyone she'd surrounded herself with. All of those things are true, and a bunch of things I haven't thought of yet.
Look, in regard to the sexism thing that you just mentioned, Hillary Clinton got blamed for the deviant behavior of Bill Clinton, but Donald Trump didn't get any negative, consequence as a result of his infidelity, him allegedly sexually assaulting people, him allegedly raping his ex-wife. So I think that's a perfect example of that. There are certain things that certain men can get away with that a woman wouldn't get away with. She's not the one who cheated. She's not the one who did anything shady in her relationship, but it didn't matter. She got blamed for the behavior of Bill Clinton in that case.
You know what? It's horrible that she would get blamed for the behavior of Bill Clinton, but I think maybe some of the calculation was well, she's okay with Bill Clinton doing that shit. I could be okay with Donald Trump doing that shit.
I know, but what Bill Clinton did and what Trump did, allegedly did, they're completely different. Right?
I'm going over the top. I actually don't agree with you guys. I think there was only one reason, the Democratic Party. I think that if Comey hadn't happened, they would have lost anyway. If they had a male candidate who was as establishment as Hillary Clinton, they would have lost anyway. It was the fatal flaw. And so there's nothing they could have done if they ran a greasy status quo establishment candidate. They were going to lose lose, and they lost. So that's it.
I think that was a big part of it. I disagree that was it.
Of course,
but
I included that
all
in my list.
Yeah.
I mean, many of these states are 1 point away. Mm-hmm. Almost anything can sway 1%
Trump
of the
did
electorate.
everything wrong, and he's still going.
Yeah, I know. That's right.
And he was always like that. Like, at the end of the day, he has some cringy positions, but he never took these just objectively disgusting positions. He always had that. So that was a clear moment of clarity where I'm like, okay, TYT's still them. And now, you know what? Now Donald Trump is president. Like, that, like, and they clearly, Jake, in that moment realized, like, the establishment Democrats, that was their fault that Donald Trump just got elected. He made that clear in that very moment, and then never brought that up again. Like, yeah. I think the 2016 moment was like, that was his like last moment of clarity, right? So like, that I think after and people say like, oh, you know, he took the money, they took the $20 million or whatever. I think that's a problem. It's definitely a problem, and I think it definitely did influence them. But I think the bigger issue is honestly just Trump derangement syndrome. I think after 2016, they lost their goddamn minds. Like, I believe after 2016, they were just like, Trump's evil. Like, there's no greater evil than Trump. He is, you know, he is the core of all evil. He is a unique evil. It's different from the other Republicans or the neoliberal Democrats or this or that. And so they just spent their time getting hackier and hackier with like anything. Oh, the Russiagate nonsense. Oh, the, you know, smear everyone who's as a Russian who doesn't align with you 100%. You know, you started to see falling outs with like some of their employees and stuff, not just Jimmy Dore, but like, you know, over Russian stuff. Like, and I have some problems with this individual, but I think like, you see what actually caused the division between the two. Michael, what was their reporter's name? Michael, Michael, everyone's remind me of this afterwards, but I can't remember. They had a reporter named Michael after Jordan Chariton. And so, you know, they eventually get to like, where they've filtered out all of their all of their progressive voices.
Matthew H. asked, been watching you since 2014. Just wondering when you'll have people like Kyle or Vosh on the Friday Power Panel. So I honestly, I don't know enough about Vosh, but I'll look into him more. I know that he got involved in some of these controversies. But and we have people on from the network and our guest hosts more often. Kyle is no longer part of the network. And so he says that he disagrees with us on some policy issues. It is what it is. Good luck to him. And let's see if he can placate the people he's trying to placate. My guess is it'll end in disaster. It has already started in disaster, and probably will head in that direction. So we've had Kyle on many times before, and we had a great relationship with him. We've done many shows with him and supported him. Nowadays, though, he seems to be going in a different direction. Everybody's free to make their own choices.
And they themselves have just become like neoliberal establishment. They're not neoliberal themselves. They're basically establishment talking point machines at this point. And yeah, I don't know. It's just I think it's because so they took money from two individuals. One is, and if either two of those affected them in a negative way, I think it was more the money from like the liberal donor than it was like Buddy Romar. I don't think they should have taken money from anybody. I don't. Stay independent and keep that independent streak. Because even if these were your real opinions, who the fuck is gonna believe you now? Like that you just happen to have establishment talking points after taking a massive amount of money. Like even if that was like your actual position, like it's not good. And so ultimately, the Buddy Romar money, I don't think is all because I've seen, like I said, I've seen every single one of their videos, and whenever they interviewed Buddy Romar, the only thing they ever talked about really with Buddy Romar when Buddy Romar ran for president was that Buddy Romar, his number one issue was TYT's number one issue, which was getting money out of politics.
The status quo never welcomes change. And when the status quo, the top 1 or 2 or 3% in our country are getting filthy rich off the status quo, they don't want to hear about change. Not at all. This election is about who do you like, Mitt Romney or Barack Obama. That's not the question. The question is, what set of policies can drive America forward, can keep our kids home, can create jobs, can make us competitive in the world? How can we lower the cost of health care for everybody, not just those who are on the outside? Everybody's paying too much for health care. How can we have a banking system that's open and competitive and fair? How can we have a tax code that you can actually read and understand with low marginal rates? How can we have fair trade with China rather than free trade? These are the issues. They were not discussed in the campaign, were they?
No,
it was all about Democrat, Republican, this person versus that person. I don't care who the next president is. I care that the next president loves America and works for its people. That's what I care about. And I think the thing between me and that goal is special interest money. That's who runs Washington.
So if he was making that money, if he was donating that money to TYT to get money out of politics, I support that cause. I don't think he should. They don't take the money. I don't care who's giving it to you. I don't care if they agree with you. Don't take the money, because you also took money from basically a neoliberal corporate establishment figure, and now you have all these corporate establishment talking points in your show, and you expect people not to believe that isn't your actual position. Like, and I think that may have affected them some. I just think it affected them less than the Trump derangement syndrome. I think the second that bug got in their brain, it laid eggs, and now their brains are just infested with little, like, just insanity of just how can we attack Trump in no matter what, even if it's a substantiveless, ridiculous smear that helps Trump more than it hurts him. Because when you attack somebody not on substance, or when you attack somebody with false claims, even people who would hate Trump, who would otherwise hate Trump, would look at that and go, well, that's not true. So maybe the other stuff about Trump, like you cause this, like, you create this, like, this doubt in people that maybe Trump isn't that bad, because, like, look at all these ridiculous things people are saying about him. Maybe the accurate things people are saying about him also aren't true. You undermine actual criticisms of Trump by making shit up, and you just go after Trump wholeheartedly, and then you're so scared of Trump, you're so afraid of Trump that you will side with anybody who also doesn't like Trump, even though the people they side with who don't like Trump support him in line with most all of his policies. So it's like, oh my God, we hate Trump. We love all these establishment Democrats now. Like, we'll say establishment Democrats, we'll say we're independent, we'll say we're progressive, and then we'll use every single right-wing neoliberal establishment corporate fucking talking point in the book. And it's as I know I've said heartbreaking and disappointing a few times throughout this interview, but with TYT specifically, as their number one fan, or I would argue I was the number one fan, or at least saying that as large of a fan as I was, as dedicated of a fan as I was, that one really hurt. The day that I unsubscribed to TYT, it burned, like, it just hurt. It was just so disappointing, because I used to love TYT. I used to think they were a fun, legitimate, and I still believe they used to be a reputable source of news. And they didn't get all these things right, and they didn't do all of the research in the world, but they would cover a story in an intelligent and coherent way that I thought was really, really valuable, especially back then when they were like the only ones doing it. And it's just better, more progressive political commentators and outlets have emerged on YouTube, as well as they have gotten further and further right. So the reason why I brought up the fact that Cenk Uygur, some people say they haven't really changed. I say they have. One of the examples was that I can't snap my fingers today. That initial loss of Hillary Clinton losing to Donald Trump, and Cenk immediately identifying the problem. Oh, the establishment Democrats, you did this. You rigged the primary against Bernie Sanders. You put up Hillary Clinton. You didn't make any concessions to the left with Hillary Clinton. You pushed her corrupt corporate scumminess onto people. You again and again and again made every wrong decision up until this point and allowed Donald Trump, the most easily beatable candidate in U.S. history, you allowed him to defeat you. And back then, he used to blame the Democrats. He blamed the party. He blamed the neoliberals in the party. In 2020, I remember he called Kyle Kalinske, or he said, like, if you don't vote for Joe Biden, then, what are you, like, you're morally inferior or something? He said something along. He basically voter shamed on Twitter. I've seen him voter shame a couple of times at this point. At that point, he did it on Rising. Somewhere on Rising, you can find a video of Cenk Uygur doing voter shaming.
Cenk joins us now via Skype to expand on that and possibly a way forward. It's good to see you, Cenk. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Cenk, tell us a little bit, just expand on that. I mean, I think you said that, Biden was not your first choice, that you absolutely want to see him win, but you've always, from the very beginning, on this show, on your own platform, have pointed out those structural weaknesses. How do you expect people in your movement and your viewers to grapple with those weaknesses and ultimately decide on who they're going to support?
Yeah. Well, look, as far as who you're going to support, I don't think that's that hard a question. Any vote that doesn't go to the credible candidate against Trump helps Trump. It just does.
And he's done it on Twitter. I know I can find the Twitter one because I retweeted it just so I'd always have it. And Kyle Kalinske came out and he's like, so wait, if I don't vote for Joe Biden, he like re-clarified, he got Cenk Uygur to re-clarify his position, to not only reiterate his position, but clarify it over again. Where he's like, wait a minute, so if I don't vote for Joe Biden, then I'm morally, I think it's morally reprehensible. Let me just make sure really quick, so that way I'm not taking him out of context here. Here it is. Joe Biden has 1,000 problems. I'll fight like hell to move towards progressive positions. I'll almost certainly help to primary him in 2024. Yeah, like you're going to primary a sitting incumbent, like in a Democratic primary. And you talk about actual, like, you talk about force to vote not actually getting done. You want to tell, first of all, let me just, small tangent here. You want to tell me that force to vote's impossible, but then you want to say you're going to try to primary Joe Biden in 2024? A sitting incumbent who has name recognition and was proven to be electable? And you want to talk to me about what it is and isn't fucking possible? All right. But not voting is still taking action. It doesn't make you morally superior to those who make hard choices. It might do the opposite. Morally inferior would be the opposite of morally superior. Let me read my response tweet here. Vote shaming is gross. Despite disagreeing, I respected Cenk because he defended those who didn't vote for Hillary, even if he didn't agree with their decisions. I'm referring to that moment right after the 2016 election where he went after the establishment Democrats and not the voters. But lately I've seen Cenk shaming voters. Here, and on shows like Rising instead of actually blaming Biden, the candidate. So I just wanted to be able to read his thing so that I'm not, taking him out of context or whatever. I don't want people to be like, well, I hate when people are like, oh, you just took me out of context and you like said one word wrong, but it doesn't change the horrible. Yeah. Regardless. Anyway, so my point is, Cenk used to say that stuff. He used to blame the politicians. It's their fault they lost, not the voters. And now, on multiple occasions, he almost exclusively blames the voters. And he does that on a number of positions. He has moved to the further and further right, or just even if you don't want to call it moving right, he's moved to the objectively wrong position, and he has made his positions worse and worse and diluted and less progressive over time, to the point where it's hard to tell between Cenk, Ana, TYT, and any actual just like MSNBC or CNN or some other establishment outlet. And that to me is disappointing. And I think that's a position that I can approach this with or at that not a lot of other people can, because I've seen every single one of TYT's videos up until that point. And I know when they're contradicting themselves or when they're lying, because there's not a single time that Cenk can say something that I'm like, but wait a minute, what about this one time when you said I got that on the lockdown. And so like a lot of people don't bring up that contradiction of him saying after 2016, people say oh, look how mad he gets. Yeah, if my kid, I got mad when Bernie Sanders lost. I get that I'm not mad. I don't think it's ridiculous that he got mad that a candidate lost. I think it's ridiculous that when he got mad, he blamed the right people, but now in 2020, he's completely regressed his position to blaming the wrong people. And so there's a number, I'll maybe make some TYT videos in the future of these kinds of contradictions that a lot of other people might even miss or don't see because they haven't been exposed to TYT as much as I have. So like I said, I have a really interesting perspective that I can draw from. And I like to think about how they got to this point. So I like to think about how TYT reached that point, and I think, and for me analyzing them, as much as I've been exposed to them, I think the money doesn't help, but I really think that Trump derangement syndrome has just infected their brains to a point where they can't think clearly about anything or objectively about anything anymore. They have narrow tunnel vision, and it's resistance Democrat talking point nonsense. I think that's all that's left. Yeah. All that's left of them at this point.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It's to a point where Cenk is calling those who are advocating for force of vote or advocating for force of vote at this point. He called them far leftists.
Yeah. Cenk used to be far left. Remember when it used to be, he used to accept compared to he used to say far left used to be a title that was a compliment, when he was on MSNBC, he basically compared himself to I remember you can see it on his movie, or not his movie, but a documentary about the Young Turks, Mad as Hell. It goes a little bit into this as well if you want a shorter version instead of watching every single TYT video where they talk about it. Other MSNBC hosts are further right wing, and Cenk was further left wing, and he prided himself on that. So it's that used to be the good position to have. Cenk used to know those positions were objectively correct, and now all of a sudden when he says that, it shows me exactly what side he is on now.